I am so happy to have you here today on the Power Transformation Podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I want to ask just a fun, lighthearted question that has nothing to do
Sure.
with what we'll talk about. If you could be a time traveler, which time period would you want to travel to, past or present?
Yeah, that's good. I like I consider myself a bit of a amateur military historian.
Mm.
And there's some phases or periods of time that I just really love to study. And one of them is World War II generation. I am just fascinated with that generation. It's called the greatest generation for a reason.
Hmm.
And I would just like to go back in that time and just kind of experience, what people were doing, what was going on. I think there was so much more a sense of community that was going on in that time frame. And but it's the dying generation. I mean, there's still some folks that
Yeah.
are around that and when I talk to them, they share things like that. But and I've had the opportunity to travel a little bit and just kind of experience some of those areas that were greatly impacted, and it just
Hmm.
there was just something that resonated with me. So I don't know, maybe just going back in that period of time a little bit.
Would there be any specific event within World War II that you'd like to have a first eyes glimpse at?
Um, there's all kinds of events.
Yeah.
The battle at Normandy, D-Day invasion. That's
Uh-huh.
something that would be very interesting just to see, experience what people were thinking at that point in time.
Hmm.
Looking in hindsight at it, yeah, okay, we
Yeah.
understand, but just the angst that was going on that day, people going in, hey, you didn't know if that was it, and just kind of
Hmm.
the experience that. So I don't know. That's just
Yeah.
that's always a time period that has always interested me for years and years.
That's interesting. Thank you for that answer. I love
Mm.
history. I truly do. And I was either going to be an English major or a history major. And, I had a lot of other things that I wanted to do and be, but I enjoy history a lot. And what you say about that greatest generation is correct. I only have one great uncle left, and he's in his late
Yeah,
90s. But
yeah,
to really think about the fact with all of my grandparents being dead, and three out of my four grandparents all took part in World War II in some capacity. And so even
yeah,
to have that type of history, I know that both of my grandfathers were overseas in combat. My maternal grandmother, she worked with the Red Cross. I had a cousin who was a WAC. So it just it goes on and on. So
yeah,
that's really interesting. And in World War II, what I do think, and this is not slighting women listeners or anything like that, but the time period was very, very different. And of course, there were
yeah,
many men, young men especially, who went overseas in
mhm,
combat, lost their lives. Many others did come home. And it's just very interesting how a lot of that manhood training, so as to speak, took place during those
yeah,
war times where so many left as boys and had to come back as men. And so it
yeah.
leads me to a bit of the question of what you do in order to serve men. And we'll jump into what
Mm.
you do, but more importantly, Rob, if someone were to ask you, who are you? How would you describe yourself?
I like that question. I'm definitely a man of faith. I'm a man
Mm,
who's very principled. I understand the importance of leadership, and the importance of leadership to me is you live a life of integrity.
mm,
Integrity is what holds everything together in the idea of leadership. And I think we're all called to be leaders in some way. If nothing else, we're leading ourselves. And I have seen too many men abdicate that role of leadership in their communities, in their home, in their places of work, and have just kind of checked out of life almost.
mm.
And so that is something that is so vital to me, is to see men become the leaders that they know they're called to be. I like to say I'm a husband to my wife, a father to my children, a friend to my friends, One of the things I'd always stress to my children when they were growing up, if you want to have friends, you need to be a friend. It's very important. And
Hmm.
I've always taken that very seriously. Um, and I'm protective of my time. My time is very valuable to me. To me, it's our greatest asset. It's our greatest asset. And if you think about it, you can lose all your money. You know what? You can get your money back tomorrow. You could even lose your house. You know what? You can even lose your life and get your life back. But once you lose
Hmm.
time, it's gone forever. So cherish the time you have. Cherish the time each and every day. I'm someone who is very intentional about what I want to accomplish. Very purposeful in how I approach each day. Because to me, each day is where the opportunities exist. They're not in yesterday.
Yes.
They're not in tomorrow. They're in today. So embrace those opportunities.
That is something to think about and something to really hold on to. But I agree. I was just talking to my mom the other day about the importance of time, is that
Mm.
time is so precious. And I am too intentional about my time, how I spend it, with whom I spend the time, and how am I absolutely maximizing that time in my life. And I can say for myself, when I was a kid, I thought time was
We all did.
forever. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
so slow, wouldn't ever change and grow up or anything like that. So let's go back just a little bit. Rob,
sure.
walk us back a bit. You, of course, are a very strong, influential man now, but take us back to those boyhood years and
Mm.
share with us what life was like for you briefly as a boy, and what is a transformative period in your life that really led you to be the man you are today.
Yeah, yeah. Life as a boy, I would say I was all boy, and what I mean by that is we did boy things. We one of the things. Well, as my let me kind of when 20 years ago, when my children were young, we moved into a new neighborhood. It would frustrate me. I would never see kids out, never
Mm,
see them out. When I was a kid, you were outside constantly. The only time you came in was to when your parents call you in for dinner or it's time to get your bath and go to bed. That's
hmm.
it. It doesn't matter what the weather was, you were outside.
Yes.
So we just did all kinds, things that boys do. We explored, tried things. Um, some of the crazy things we did back in the day with the BMX bikes were the thing. So we would take our bikes, build these ramps, and try and see how far we could jump them.
Yeah.
Of course, we had some wipeouts, but just doing those boy things, just and then let boys be boys. And I was definitely, I experienced what it meant to be a boy. For me, I would say a transportive moment for me was when I was in my mid-teens and we moved. We just moved.
Mm,
We didn't move that far, but we moved and
mm,
just kind of separated me from the connections I had. And it kind of for about a year there, it was a struggle to really try and make new connections, build those new connections, and understand what I could, who I wanted to be with. And it kind of maybe sent me down a little path, maybe getting in with some of the wrong crowd,
mm,
just to for no other reason, just to try and build those connections. So I understood the importance of making certain that um, the people you hang out with are the people that are going to take you to that next level. They're going to not hold you back, but let you go forward.
hmm.
So that was something very pivotal to me. I learned some hard lessons in that. Definitely learned some hard lessons in that, and it just kind of followed me into my late teens, early 20s, as far as making certain I was trying to be around the right people. And there were times again I still struggled getting around the wrong crowd
Hmm.
because and it just kind of took me down some wrong paths again, and it kind of led to maybe some periods of loneliness.
Hmm.
And then as I have as I was able to get through that and kind of get on with my life and just try and figure out what life looks through me as I got through school and got out and got my first big boy job and started adulting, I guess is what the word is.
Yeah.
um, um Yeah, that's when you start to realize, the for me as a man, life changes when you see that first child come out of your life. You're like, all
Mm.
right, it's game on now. Like life has completely changed.
Uh-huh. It's real.
And I'm sure for women too, when that child leaves their body, it's real for them as well. Life
Hmm.
is forever changed. And that's when I got very serious about the idea of what it means to be a man, living my principles, living by integrity, living a life of purpose.
I love that answer. What a beautiful, loaded lesson. And what I'm curious about is through those challenges that you had of hanging with the wrong crowd or starting to just learn who you were becoming as a man, who are some influential men, or was there one man in particular that helped to show you the way that led more into your manhood?
Yeah, I can go back one in particular. When I was in the service, when I was in the Army, I
Mm,
had a commander who was tough on me.
mm,
And I, the reason he was tough on me is because he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And so he was just trying to pull that out.
mm,
And he got it out of me. He got it out of
mm,
me. And respected him for that because I also saw him interact with people that if he didn't go after him, it's because he'd given up on him. And I told myself, you know what? I'm not going to let him give up on me. I'm going to continue to let him challenge me, challenge myself, because those when you challenge yourself, you start to understand what it is you can accomplish.
yeah.
You get out of your comfort zone. Um, I like to tell people that we weren't meant to sit in this life to be comfortable because comfort leads to complacency. Complacency leads to sitting on the couch with a Costco size and just binge watching Netflix all night. That's not
Mm,
what we were in life. We were meant to be uncomfortable because when we're uncomfortable, that's where growth happens. That's when we really start to understand what it is we can do. And maybe, we do something that makes us uncomfortable. Maybe it wasn't really what we were meant to do.
mm-hmm,
But you got to challenge yourself. You got to try different things, and that's what I started doing. And I, that commander in particular, he did that for me. I had the same when I was in corporate. I had a boss he was actually two levels above me, but he just for whatever reason
hmm.
he just took a notice of me,
Wow.
and he was tough on me. And then so I saw the challenge. Okay, you're going to challenge me. All right, I'll step up. I'll volunteer to do
Mhm,
these things. And the more I volunteered, the more he would challenge me. And it made me understood the importance of the leadership within the being that leader within to lead yourself, to better yourself, to educate
mhm,
yourself. And those two in particular, those two men in particular, helped me to understand that we need those mentors, we need those coaches, we need those men in our lives that are going to push us when we're not
mhm,
ready to push ourselves. Because sometimes it's easy when it's sometimes it's easy, just like all right, you kind of getting that mode where you're just kind of on cruise control, and maybe you've
mhm,
stopped pushing yourself, and you wake up one day and you realize, well, I'm a little off course here. But we got to have people that are willing to push us in one way or another. It doesn't necessarily need to be somebody who's above. It's going to be people that
yeah.
are below. I mean, I've had the
Mhm,
opportunity to lead different organizations, and I've had people below me that have pushed me as well. I'm leading them, and they're pushing me to get better about what I'm doing, and I appreciated that as
mhm.
well.
Well, yeah, and I like the fact that you mentioning this commander who poured into you as well as in the corporate level, and then you go on to talk about how others around you showing that community is so important. Now, I'm just going to put in my own personal perspective about something. This is just what I think. I think in our society, whether it's Western society or not, I even think global, but particularly with Western society, there is a stereotype. And I think that stereotypes aren't necessarily true, but are based on someone's truth. So you just don't
Okay.
come up with a stereotype without seeing a trend or a pattern. However, I think that in our society, we are shown that men are supposed to be strong. Men are the ones who are the leaders and the heads.
Mhm.
Now, I make it very clear, even in my own relationship. I am definitely alpha when it comes to my business, my entrepreneurial
Mhm.
journey, things like that. But I have very a traditional mindset when it comes to the household, things like that, and that comes from my own faith as a follower of Christ. What I'm getting
Yeah.
to, Rob, is you said something that was really key early on about even in your younger formative years, you were lonely at times. And
Mhm.
sometimes thinking about men and loneliness don't necessarily go hand in hand in terms of what a person might think. So, my question for you is, what led you, Rob? What was it on your journey that led you to say, hold on, men need extra support, particularly in this area of being lonely, and I can
Yeah.
help? What was that catalyst, that spark
Well,
that led you into
yeah,
that?
I love that question. And one of there's a couple. I would say
Mm-hmm.
the first one that really led me. I talked about my faith is when I became a Christian in 1995,
Mm.
and part of what led me there is I was just looking for connection with men. Really, I was just, and I
Oh.
had some who had invited me to church, and so I took my family, wife, and children. I only had one child at that point in time, to church, and real quickly. I started gravitating towards the men's groups because it was
Mm.
an opportunity for me to build those connections. I saw the importance of just spending time with men, not talking about
Mhm.
trivial stuff, like, the score of the latest football game or
Yeah.
whatever, but having real conversations about life. And I'd never had any of that before. Never really had any of
Okay.
that before. So that was kind of an eye opener for me. I'm like, okay, um, there are men that can do this. And I agree with what you say that as men we're expected to be tough, and we're expected to be leaders,
Mm-hmm.
but as men we're also emotional beings,
Mm-hmm.
and if you tamp down those emotions too much and don't let them out, eventually they're going to explode. So being with men is having those conversations where we could hug each other or maybe cry with each other and laugh with each other and just you know be silly with each other. um, that was an eye opener to me. That was a turning point for me. Um, Another turning point came during 2020
Mm-hmm.
when the world kind of shut down, and if you were paying attention to the news and paying attention to the statistics, there was a real spike in suicide among men.
That's right.
And it got to the point where I'm like, damn, death by suicide among men is going to outpace death by this disease. And I think that was an eye opener for a lot of people, just not me. I think a lot of people were really open to that. And I think men just kind of hungered for that. When Yeah, and I think part of there's kind of I don't know, but I think one of the
Mm-hmm.
reasons that really kind of resonated that way is that I think one thing that we men can be very good at is identifying with a 9 to 5 identity.
Mm.
And when everything happened in
Explain that
2020,
more, the 9 to 5 identity.
well,
I get it, but
think about
explain
yeah,
it more.
well, think about it. We think about men, going on the golf course. Okay, so they
Mm-hmm.
go to the golf course, and what's the first thing you always say? Hey, what do you do? What do you
Mm-hmm.
do? If you're a doctor or a lawyer, hey, your status is up here. If you're just some dude is just out doing whatever, maybe they don't. So that 9 to 5 identity
Mm-hmm.
it is so vital. I've seen it being so important for many men, and I think women do the same thing. Maybe not necessarily with the 9 to 5, but I see women do it with their children. They wrap their
Mm.
identity totally in their children. And I've seen too many women that try and live their life vicariously through their children, and they've kind of lost track of who they are. And so for men too, I mean, I've been through 3 corporate downsizings, and the first one was just kind of like, damn. Even though you
Mm,
knew it was coming, even though I knew it was coming, when you walk in the office that day and there's HR greeting you
mm.
at the door, handing you a pack, and
Yeah.
marching you in the conference room, you're like, all right. But when that was just kind of taken away from me, I I struggled for probably about a year just trying to get things
Wow.
figured out. So yeah, and then I mentioned women. When I've seen the
Hmm.
women when the children leave the home, I've seen some women. They're just kind of flailing. And
Hmm.
so part of what I really wanted to focus on is helping men to understand. Hey, you're just more than this false identity you've created. This whatever
Hmm.
this 9 to 5 identity of however you identify yourself as insurance agent, attorney, doctor, whatever. There's more to you than that. So I want men to understand that we live our lives in a holistic way, a body, mind,
Yeah.
and health, and we just don't compartmentalize our life. We've got to live it holistically, and so that's what I want men to really understand the importance of living a holistic life.
Wow. And how do you, I love this. How do you help to guide men in redefining what it means to quote unquote be a man in a way that really aligns with their true selves and purpose?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's very important is just asking those questions, getting them
Hmm.
to understand, to really spend time wrestling with this idea. I'm a big proponent of journaling. I'm a big proponent of mindfulness. I'm a big proponent of reading. And when you really start spending time in that, and the one thing for me, journaling, I had someone turn me. I had you talk about one of the turning points. One of those turning points back in the '90s was a man who really encouraged me. You got to start writing your thoughts down. You've got to start writing your thoughts down. And this was, and I started doing that. And there's just something.
Mhm.
There's an energy that happens when you start writing your thoughts down. I've done it for probably going on 30 years, and I've saved every one of those journals.
Mm.
Saved every one of them. Don't throw them away. I save them all. Much to my wife's chagrin. She puts they're just taking space on the bookshelf. And I'm like, no, those are going nowhere. Um, so it, to me, I have just found that energy in that. And the practice of mindfulness too.
Hmm.
Um, just being intense, whatever you want to call it, meditation, mindfulness, prayer. I mean, they're
Yeah.
all, and just getting really in tune with what it is you want to accomplish, what it is you want to do, and who you are. Um, those practices in and of themselves will bring clarity to you. So as far as when I'm working with men, one of the things I really encourage them to do, if you're not doing those practices, you got to start. You got to start now. You got to start figuring it out what it is you want out of life. And to me, that is the quickest route to start getting those things figured out, because you'll start noticing a trend. You'll start noticing things that keep coming back to you, keep coming back to you, keep coming back to you. You got to pay attention to that. Be in tune to that. There's a reason that
Hmm.
stuff keeps coming back to you. And I absolutely believe that um, the dreams we had as a youth never leave us. They
Mm.
never leave us because, and you said you're a teacher, but in some ways, I believe our education system in some ways kind of squashes that idea of a child dreaming to what they can
Mm.
accomplish.
Mm.
And
You look, you know what? I could talk on and on for days, B, because yes, I was a public school educator and school leader for 20 years prior to shifting into full-time entrepreneurship. And that's a whole other episode in and of
yeah, there
itself.
is.
But
And I know,
I
and I
do
know there's
agree
some,
with you. I do
and I know
agree.
there's some, yeah, and I know there's some amazing teachers out there that are able to pull that. There's one story I saw about Charles Schultz.
Uh-huh.
And as a
Yes.
youth, he was just kind of a quirky kid, and teachers
Yeah.
didn't know how to deal with him, and he would just spend all day, just kind of doodling. And so one day, this teacher just handed him a piece of paper and just said, "Hey, Charles, do whatever." And he did it, and she turned it in, and she was just
Mm.
amazed by what he had drawn. and she just saw another side of him that no
Hmm.
other teacher had seen. And
Hmm.
so she encouraged him to become Charles Schultz. And
Hmm.
if that wouldn't happen, maybe we wouldn't have, the Charles Schultz that we know. And
That's
was
right.
always, I was always fascinated by that story, that it, took one person to see
That's right.
something in him. So
Yeah. And and it's really interesting you would even bring that up, because even when it comes to the context of educating boys in general, boys were a bit more rambunctious, and my focus were mainly middle and high school, but I was the
yeah,
kind where, if I had students who were off the wire, I asked them straight up, look, what's happening? And I wanted them to be honest with me. And, I did everything I could to have them to think outside of the box, because
yeah,
even when it comes to learning styles, there is scientific data that there are different ways and different methods that they learn. And this leads me even to asking this. When I was in that school setting, or when I left out of the classroom, worked in HR, and I was helping other teachers to bring out the best in students, I needed them to tap into a student's vulnerability. And
yeah.
how do you get that child to be vulnerable? So, in the same light, Rob, when it comes to men, the work that you do in coaching men, go more into how you, not your trade secrets, but what you coach them on. But also, Rob, how do you get men to not only embrace vulnerability, but to get them to see it as a key component of their growth?
Yeah, you've kind of swerved into something the idea of vulnerability. I think where it starts with is trust.
Mm.
That if I'm going to be really vulnerable with another man, I got to trust. I got to trust that what I'm telling them is in confidence,
Hmm.
and that they have my best interest with what I'm telling them. And the same goes when another man's being vulnerable to me. They've got to trust me, and I kind of, like I say, I put it in the vault, stick it in the vault. um,
Hmm.
to, to stick it in the vault. When a man tells me something that he's being vulnerable about, yeah, that's it. It's not going to go past me. I mean, that's where
Hmm.
that trust is built, because I know if I were to violate that trust, then that relationship is forever ruined. So what do I really want to do with men? I think the first thing that's most important is in working with men, they got to know their truths. They've got to know what it is they believe in, because I and it's just not men but women too. I see too many people that they just believe something because everybody else believes it. My
Mm.
family believes it. Everybody in my neighborhood, everybody I go to church with, everybody I go to see at the grocery store
Yeah.
believes it. So I don't want to stand out. Well, sometimes you got to be willing to take that stand, because here's the thing: is that life is going to happen. Life is going to happen to us. And when you know your truths, you're able to take that stand. So you got to really understand what your truths are, and be rock solid on that, because every choice we make, every decision we make, rest on that foundation of our truths. Everything else builds up. That's our foundation, is our truths, and everything else just builds up to what it is we want to do. All the choices we make, all the decisions we make, rest on that foundation. And when it's solid, you're making the right choices and the right decisions that serve you, serve your family, serve your community, serve your business, serve whatever it is you're trying to do.
Hmm.
And then just bring clarity to what it is you want to do. We call it a vision. I like the word dream. Dream just kind of says something really different to me. And you got to be clear. And the words we use are powerful. And what I will tell people, Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream." He didn't say, "I have a plan." I hear the "I have a plan." I think of the endless corporate meetings I had to sit through, where it was death by PowerPoint. But he said, "I have a dream." And he was able to inspire millions of people into his dream. Why is
Hmm.
that? Because he had a deep clarity around what it is he wanted to do. He had a solid foundation of truths guiding him and being his guiding light, his principle. Maybe we all can inspire. Maybe we can inspire millions. Maybe you and I can both, but
Hmm.
it's going to take us to be very clear with our truths and very clear on what it is we want to accomplish. And that's what I want the people I work with to understand. Be clear on what it is you want to do, because it makes taking that action so much easier. When you're clear
Hmm.
on it, you know where you're going. And we're all going to end up somewhere.
Yeah.
Might as well make it where you want to be.
Yeah.
You might as well make it where you want to be.
Mm. And that trust factor is that really foundational piece. And so I would assume, and I try to avoid making assumptions, but I would assume that that trust factor is even important when there are men's groups and in building communities. So in the same way, how can you encourage men to even establish community amongst other men? And as a real life example, I'll share someone I know that I'm very, very close with. They work so much, they have so much going on in their lives that they know as a man that they haven't been able to spend as much quality time with the men that are very
Mhm.
important. And I encourage this person a lot and I say, hey, your friends, your, you know, fellas, they're still important. They're still important to
Yeah.
have. And so, how do you encourage community amongst men, especially with the man whom just may be absolutely bogged down with life
Yeah.
responsibilities?
Yeah. I've had the opportunity to be a part of men's groups and leads men's groups for 30 years. And, one of the things that as I was leading groups, I was very intentional about, hey, we're meeting Thursday morning at 7 o'clock for breakfast here. And we
Mm,
made it a standing date, because
yeah.
that was there's no excuse for a man to say, well, it's not, well, no, you don't have to be in the office till 8:15. So what
Hmm.
you can show up. You get the kids out the door and you can show up. And I know not everything you can show up, but I was very intentional about that. And I've continued to be an active part of different men's groups, both faith based, both and some secular based.
Hmm.
But the one keystone of everything is that trust factor. I got to trust these men that I'm talking with. I got to trust that they have my best interests at heart because I have their best interests at heart. And when you do that, um, like I said, trust is the glue that holds everything together. And
Hmm.
so just making time for that, you can always make time.
Hmm.
When you're intentional about your time, you can always find the time. You can always fit it into your schedule, whatever that
Hmm.
looks like. Um, so it's just being purposeful about your time.
Yeah.
People that tell me I don't have the time for that. Okay, well, let's really look at how you spent the past 7 days. Let's
Hmm.
really dig in. How did you spend your past 7 days? When you got home from work, what did you do? Did you just plop down on the couch and just watch TV the rest of the night before it was
Uh-huh.
bedtime? Did you spend so people that say they don't have the time, I'm going to push back on that a little bit.
Hmm.
Let's really look at how you're spending your time, because, like I said, and I said earlier, that's your most valuable asset. So use it
Hmm.
wisely. Use it in a way that benefits you and benefits those that you have the opportunity to spend it with.
Yeah. And Rob, while you have helped well over 100,000 plus men in this area of walking into their greatness, is there somebody that just comes to mind of a man where they made a complete transformation in their life in terms of maybe having struggled with their loneliness or simply needing to walk further into who they were created to be? Could you share a snippet of a client or someone you've been coaching in a group that has really made a true turnaround story and how that happened?
Yeah, I mean, there's been many examples.
Mm-hmm.
As far as a recent client who I was working with, he was just struggling. It came down to that 9 to 5 identity. He knew
Mm,
he was tired of what he wanted to do. He wanted to embark on his own thing. So we really worked with him to get clear on what it is. He had a vague idea, but I really wanted him to get clear on how he used the words, instead of just leaving his job and not knowing what's going on. Let's get very clear on
mm,
this. Let's kind of create that um, journey for yourself. And we were able to do that. And he's kind of launched his own business, and I'm happy for him. I you know when I
mm,
See that? It just kind of gives me pride. And then, other men that I've worked with, kind of going back to my faith community, just seeing men that have come in and maybe they've really been struggling with something. Maybe they've been struggling with, some type of addiction, or maybe some type of, struggling with a relationship with their wife, and watching them take that next step because conversations that we've been able to have to let them know
Hmm.
that, hey, you're not alone in this. We all can have those same struggles. You're not alone. Don't think you're alone, because that's the thing that too many men will believe the lie that, I'm going through these hard times and I'm the only one. Well, no, you're not. You're not. I, we all experience something. Maybe I'm not experiencing the same exact things that another man is, but there's other men that have. And
Hmm.
so we all have that struggles. Uh, we can't go it alone. So just seeing
Hmm.
men have been able to take that next step in their family and in their faith, that's something too that um,
Yeah.
is always powerful. And me too, as far as without some of those men in my life, maybe I wouldn't be. I'm not maybe. I know for a fact I would
Hmm.
not have been able to take that next step in my relationships and my family and in my career.
How did you recognize, kind of going back to your past some, but how did you recognize, Rob, that you really needed a strong male presence in your life? I know that your commander poured into you, but did you ever have a moment when you knew that you needed that, or how did you come to that awareness?
Yeah, I think you as kind of just going back to my youth. You
Hmm.
always have those men in your life. I mean, I remember in elementary school, I had two, no, one, just one male teacher. There was another one, he was kind of around, but
Hmm.
um, getting as you're going through kindergarten to sixth grade, and all you have are
Hmm.
female teachers, and all of a sudden you have a man who's a teacher. There was something a little bit different about that. There was just a different energy in that.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so I think the idea of having men in your life is never going to leave. And I've always had a father, I always had a grandfather, always
Hmm.
just had other men in my life. Um, but sometimes you get you can get a little stubborn and maybe not necessarily listen to them. And you got to figure, you got to fall down a few times before you're like, okay,
Hmm.
maybe what they said was right. Maybe I should have listened to them the first six times they told me to do that, and not do my own thing.
Hmm. And two, something that I thought of is that I also know of some men where they may have had a father in the household,
Mhm.
but that father
Yeah.
was dealing with his own life
Right.
and issues.
Yeah.
And you have the kids, and they may be working and providing financially, materialistically, but that emotional piece is
No,
still
yeah.
what's needed.
You're right. You're right.
Hmm.
And you mentioned middle school. I worked with middle school age boys and girls for
Oh.
15 years. And I could always tell the boys within 30 seconds of talking to them that had either no father in the home or that had no relationship with the father. I could tell within 30 seconds. You're like, all right.
Hmm.
And some of those boys were hungering for that male relationship. And so I kind of tried to pour into them as much as I could, and be there for them. And, I
Hmm.
knew sometimes it could be a challenge because, when you're lacking that discipline, and you can experience being in the classroom, when a child's lacking that discipline that they're not getting at home, it can make things a little tough in another environment.
Hmm.
Um, uh, but you don't want to give up. I didn't give up on any of them. And some of them, and I've now then run into some of them, and they've
Hmm.
turned out to be fine young men.
Exactly. Now, I do know that you're married and have kids, but I've never asked you, do you have girls and boys, just boys, girls? What's the breakdown of your children in terms of gender?
I have a girl and a boy,
Girl and
so
a
they're
boy.
both
Okay.
adults,
Perfect.
both adults.
Yes. So this is my question here. When as a father raising a son, it's
Mhm.
interesting how life can come full circle. But how over the years did you help instill this concept of getting your son to a place of knowing that there was a safe space he could turn to in
Yeah,
times of loneliness? How did you
yeah,
help him on his journey like that?
yeah. That's a good question because I know I saw him struggling with it. There's
Mm,
one reason is that he had some disability, he had some physical disabilities,
okay.
and so he was really trying to find his place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the one thing that my wife and I we both did with our both our children is when they got in school, I said, we don't care what you do, you're going to get involved in something. I don't care what it is. If it's drama, sports, band. And I just told him, I said, I chose sports when I was a kid and I did a little bit of drama, but you got to find something.
Mm-hmm.
So my son found music, found the band. I did not grow up in the music world, neither did my wife. And he found that space um, in music. And he took it to the point where eventually when he was in high school, he became the field commander of his marching band. And watching him grow through that to become that leader that he was wanted to that he knew he could be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those moments as a parent. You're like, all right, this kid's got it. He'll do fine. And the the thing I'm most proud of for both my children is that they're adults. One is 32, and the other one is just turned 28,
Mm-hmm.
and they're out living their own life. They're
Mm-hmm.
living their own life. They're thriving. They don't come to mom and dad with their hands out and
Mm-hmm.
wanting this and wanting that. Um, I don't really offer them any advice unless they come to me and ask for it. I don't want to offer them
Mm-hmm.
advice. I want them to figure life out on their own.
Yeah.
Um, and and I've maybe have had to have this conversation once with each of them where I see, hey man, you're going down a path you don't need to be going down.
Mm-hmm.
And um, yeah, we'll get that turned around. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it's as a parent, that's all you want. I I the way my wife and I we raised our children, we didn't raise them to be their best bud. We raised them to
Yeah.
be quality human beings. And
Uh-huh.
if you when you raise your child to be a quality human being, that's what they turn out to be. Pour your
Mm-hmm.
time into them. As a father, pour your time into your children because
Mm-hmm.
it's time you will never regret.
Yeah. And I'm thankful that I still have both of my parents, but a lot of my friends are losing one or have lost both already. Even different cousins have already lost one
Yeah.
or both parents. But I can tell you it has made a huge difference in my life as a woman, having an active, involved father. I'm a daddy's girl, true and blue. And just because I'm a daddy's girl, what I loved about my dad is um I was the youngest and so I was spoiled, but I wasn't spoiled rotten, meaning that I didn't get any and everything that I wanted, and my father still held me accountable and still does to this day, even as an adult, where
Yeah.
I know and credit a lot of my womanhood, of course, to mom, hands down,
Hmm.
but also it made a difference having an active, involved father in my life. It really, really
Yeah.
did. And
Well.
so, yeah, made a huge difference. And it helped me even to, I'm definitely not an expert on men, but I also think it's helped me along the way to try to be a lot more empathetic, even in how men operate, think, navigate, and
Hmm.
even in my own relationship, which is healthy, you know, j hearing a lot of different perspectives from him about things and life make a difference. And so, as we start to wrap this up, suppose there's a man that's listening who may feel stuck or disconnected, where they want to be a part of community or want to even reclaim or step into the greatness of their power. What is one
Yeah.
step or word of encouragement that you will offer to that man?
Just find that one thing that you can resonate with. I don't care what it is. Push yourself beyond that limit. If it's,
Hmm.
the thing is, we sometimes we don't do anything because we think we got to come up with this big grandiose plan to do this. And
Hmm.
I could never do that. Well, you know what? Every journey starts with a single step. So take that first step. Find out what it is. If you're passionate about serving, find a way you can serve. Go into schools. I've gone into schools before and just had opportunities to be a part of a before school and after school program. Just find what it is. Just find that one thing that you can resonate with, and maybe makes you feel a little uncomfortable, but in the end will make you feel better for doing
That's right. And
it.
Rob, we haven't even touched a tip of the iceberg of the extensive resume and just things that you've done throughout your life so far and what's more to be continued. But if someone wants to connect with you and say, "Hey, I want to learn more about you, perhaps even get some coaching from you, learn about your
Yeah.
programs and your offerings," how can a person do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all over social media. Best place I usually hang out is on LinkedIn. So find me there, Rob Fenstermaker. Reach out to me there, or just you email me direct to my
Hmm.
email, robfenstermaker95 @gmail. That's a good place to start as well. I follow up on my email. Just let me know what questions you have, and I'll be happy to answer and get back with you and schedule some time with you. We can have a little bit of a conversation.
And I'll have all of that, of course, in the show notes. And so, Rob, as we transition out, I want to ask you this is what influence do you want to have over someone's life that you're coaching?
Hmm. That's a deep question. What influence do I want? Well, the influence I want is to let them understand that your life has significance.
Mm.
Don't ever think that your life is not significant, because it does have significance. It has significance to you. It has significance to the people that you have connection with. And you've got to understand that the the actions you take will always make a difference. Always make a difference. So be intentional with what you do, and know that you have the opportunity to make a difference.
And I certainly am glad that you are making a difference in the lives of so many. Thank you wholeheartedly for the work you do. And I will also say publicly and openly, I truly thank you and value you for even coming to me saying that you even wanted to be a guest. And I was blown away with the work that you do. Rob and I know each other through another entrepreneurial group. And just the fact that he reached out to me, he Rob's very low key. He's not um braggart. He's not pompous, anything like that. But yet, when you learn about this man and you just know what an incredible person he is, how well connected he is, none of that even matters to him because all he wants to do is genuinely change lives for the better. And Rob, I can honestly say that's what you have also done in my life. And I'm honored to know you and continue pouring into men globally. Let God continue to use and guide you, and may God's favor be upon you and your entire family. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Power Transformation Podcast.
Well, thank you. You have deeply humbled me, and I thank you for those words.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Power Transformation Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow or subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. It helps us inspire even more listeners. And don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who could use a little power in their transformation. Until next time, keep bouncing back, keep rising, and be good to yourself and to others.